Travel creates new experiences and unforgettable memories. Through landscapes, food, scents, and textures, it awakens and satisfies our senses. The endless joy and inspiration of traveling.
Presidential candidates have been busy appealing to voters as to why they are the best choice for the nation. With the DP's Lee Jae-myung in Jeollabuk-do province today, the PPP's Kim Moon-soo in the Gyeonggi-do and Chungcheong-do areas, and the Reform Party's Lee Jun-seok in Cheonan. Trade Minister An Dok-gun meets with USTR Jamieson Greer in Jeju amid the Trump administration's tariff campaign. And they agree to continue their talks in Washington next week, focusing on balanced trade and non-tariff measures, among others. And we take a closer look at why Korea is catching the spotlight in Osaka, the venue for this year's World Expo, presenting innovation, culture, and diplomacy. It's May 16th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We start yet again with the latest on the campaign trail. Democratic Party presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung continued his campaign in his party's stronghold for the second day in a row, where he continued carrying a message for balanced regional growth. Our correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
The Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung, who began rallying support in his party's strongholds on Thursday, continued his campaign in them on Friday, this time in Jeollabuk-do province. Lee's campaign trail took him through the cities of Iksan, Gunsan, Jeonju, and Jeongup. During his visit to Iksan, he emphasized balanced regional growth, noting that Jeollabuk-do has been especially overlooked.
If the current concentration in the capital region continues, the country won't be able to grow sustainably. Balanced regional growth isn't just about helping local regions, it's a necessary strategy for South Korea's future.
He also addressed the overconcentration of universities in the capital and the need to strengthen universities in other regions. He said he would increase support for national universities outside of Seoul and promised to improve conditions for young people through better education, cultural opportunities, and jobs so they don't feel the need to leave their provinces. During his visit to Jeonju, where he was met with traditional Korean music and gugang musicians, he said the culture industry was a key strategic sector. He added that the government should consider guaranteeing a minimum living wage for artists and cultural workers. In a social media post, he also announced new policies for women, including tougher penalties for dating violence and digital sex crimes, and plans to close the gender pay gap. Meanwhile, lawmaker Kim Sang-wook, who was in favor of former President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment and recently broke away from the People Power Party, showed up at Lee's campaign to support him. Kim described Lee as both a true conservative and a true progressive, saying that those who divide politics into sides shouldn't be involved in politics. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the People Power Party's presidential candidate Kim Moon-soo held rallies in Gyeonggi-do province, where he vowed to upgrade transportation before heading south to the Chungcheong-do region. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
After a relatively quiet day on Thursday, Kim Moon-soo of the People Power Party went into full rally mode on Friday. He started in Gyeonggi-do province, where significantly he was governor for 2 terms and touted his starting of the GTX high-speed underground train system in the greater capital region. In fact, when he visited Dongtan in Hwasong City, he pledged to improve transportation even more, this time for owners of cars.
When you build a new city, because initially there are no jobs, everyone goes to Seoul for work. There is no way to get there. The Gyeongbu Expressway actually becomes the Gyeongbu parking lot.
He pledged to construct 6 new beltways around the capital region. On top of this, Kim vowed to expand the GTX line, saying those currently being constructed will have additional stops added. His campaign promised to build similar models around the country for major metropolitan areas. In the afternoon, he held rallies in Chungcheong-do region, and one major stop was Sejong City. He pledged to finish the process of making Sejong the nation's administrative capital by sending the National Assembly's major committees alongside having a second office for the president there. While these pledges have been made by other candidates, Kim added that the country's top 5 major commissions, including the Korea Communication Commission and Korea Fair Trade Commission, will be moved to Sejong to ensure administrative work can be done there. In addition, he promised to make Sejong more reachable with his specialty express train lines.
However, since the current railway infrastructure is insufficient for civilian access, there's a need to further develop the network, such as the CTX. I mentioned earlier.
In total, Kim went to 7 cities on Friday to hold rallies and make developmental pledges, all in Gyeonggi-do and Chungcheong-do provinces, typically considered battleground regions. On Saturday, he will campaign in the southwest, Jeollado provinces, the stronghold of the rival Democratic Party. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-seok was in the central city of Cheonan today to consolidate support. He claimed that the main Conservative Party's candidate cannot challenge his Liberal counterpart, and insisted his solid standing with young voters provides him with a strategic advantage. Earlier on this Friday, he also shared intentions to transform the southern port city of Busan into a global data hub, with a strong legal framework in place against potential data breaches as feared by foreign firms. Arirang TV will broadcast 3 live debates featuring the major candidates beginning this Sunday. Each debate will spotlight a different theme: economy on May 18th, social issues on May 23rd, and politics on May 27th. 4 candidates will take the stage: Lee Jae-myung of the Democratic Party, Kim Moon-soo of the People Power Party, Lee Jun-seok from the Reform Party, and Kwon Young-guk of the Democratic Labor Party. All 3 debates will begin at 8 p.m. Korea Standard Time. Moving on, top trade officials from South Korea and the U.S. met in Jeju this afternoon on the margins of APEC trade talks amid the Trump administration's tariff campaign. As a result, more consultations are slated for next week in Washington, focusing on 6 areas, including non-tariff measures. Our correspondent Bae Yoon-ji has the details.
South Korea's Trade Minister An Dok-gun and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer met on Jeju Island on Friday and agreed to hold technical talks on tariffs next week in Washington, D.C. The meeting, held on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Trade Ministers meeting hosted by South Korea, comes as both countries have been working to produce a package of deals aimed at removing new U.S. tariffs before the July 8th deadline, when the 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs is lifted.
We have 50 days until the negotiation due date set by the U.S. government. Under the acting president, the South Korean government has been making efforts through intergovernmental cooperation and gathering opinions from industry stakeholders.
An explained that next week's talks will be focused on 6 key areas: balanced trade, non-tariff measures, economic security, digital trade, country of origin, and commercial considerations. Friday's talks follows the 2 officials meeting 3 weeks ago in Washington, where South Korea requested exemptions from reciprocal tariffs while offering cooperation on shipbuilding and energy. In fact, prior to his meeting with An, Greer met with the CEOs of South Korea's leading shipbuilding companies, HD Hyundai and Hanwha Ocean, to discuss cooperation. South Korea, which faces 25% U.S. reciprocal tariffs, hopes to leverage its shipbuilding capabilities in upcoming tariff negotiations, after the Trump administration reportedly showed great interest in this field, as it seeks to revive the American shipbuilding industry. As Seoul works to tackle trade uncertainties from Trump's tariffs, eyes are now on whether South Korea and the U.S. will be able to make further progress during their talks next week. 배은지, Arirang News, Jeju.
The finance authorities continue to sound the alarm about growing pressures on the local economy due to a combination of U.S. tariffs and weaker consumption at home. Park Jun-han explains.
The Ministry of Economy and Finance assessed that downside pressures on the economy are continuing to grow for the fifth consecutive month. This assessment comes in the ministry's Green Book, a monthly report detailing the nation's economic trends. The ministry said a recovery of domestic demand, particularly in consumption and construction investment, has remained sluggish, while employment difficulties persist, especially in vulnerable sectors. It also noted that the Korean economy has been facing increasing downside pressures, including a slowdown in exports due to worsening external conditions following the imposition of U.S. tariffs.
I think the tariff impact is there, and that's why we use the term export slowdown from April's data. We also saw some growth in exports to countries outside of the U.S., making the April export data less severe than the tariff effects might suggest.
South Korea saw a dramatic decrease in construction investment from over a year ago. Investment in the first quarter of 2025 saw a year-on-year decline of 12.2%. In April 2025, there were about 28.9 million people employed, an increase of 194,000 from the same period last year. However, year-on-year manufacturing sector employment was down 124,000 last month, the largest drop in 6 years and 2 months. Employment challenges also persisted among the 15 to 29-year-old age group. The unemployment rate for young people in April stayed at 7.3%, continuing in the 7% range since February. To combat the slowdown in exports and to boost the country's industrial competitiveness, the ministry pledged to swiftly execute the necessary supplementary budget. The budget of 13.8 trillion won, or about $9.9 billion, will be used to bolster the job market, construction, and support for small businesses. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
Peace talks between Russia and Ukraine that were scheduled for Thursday in Istanbul were delayed by 1 day, with the absence of Putin raising a question about whether Russia is serious about ending the war. Kim Bo-kyung explains.
All eyes were fixed on the first direct peace talks between Russia and Ukraine in more than 3 years, which were supposed to take place on Thursday but are now expected to happen on Friday in Istanbul. However, the negotiations failed to materialize amid criticism over the standard of the Russian delegation. Russian President Vladimir Putin was a noticeable absence on Moscow's list of attendees, despite proposing the talks and a challenge from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to meet face-to-face. While making his announcement regarding the team headed by his defense minister to Istanbul for the peace talks, Zelensky criticized Moscow for not taking the negotiations seriously.
After we understood the level of the Russian delegation, we see that, unfortunately, they are not taking the real negotiations very seriously. So far, we do not see among those present anyone who actually makes decisions.
The sides have also been separated with regard to the outcomes they each want from the direct talks. While Ukraine's top priority is a ceasefire, the Russian delegation, led by Vladimir Medinsky, said their goal was to eliminate the basic root causes of the conflict and to sooner or later establish long-term peace. He added that these negotiations are a continuation of the peace process that fell through in 2022 when Ukraine saw Russian demands as a threat to its sovereignty. Regarding the meeting, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Thursday expressed limited optimism, saying Washington frankly does not have high expectations of the negotiations. Speaking to reporters in the southern Turkish city of Antalya, he said only the direct engagement between the U.S. and Russia could result in a breakthrough.
And frankly, at this point, I think it's abundantly clear that the only way we're going to have a breakthrough here is between President Trump and President Putin.
김보경, Arirang News.
In the Middle East, as U.S. President Trump is on his trip to the region, Israel continues pounding Gaza, killing more than 100 people. His itinerary does not include Israel. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
With ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas stalled, the Israeli military conducted airstrikes on dozens of sites in Gaza from Wednesday night and into Thursday. The latest barrage of airstrikes killed at least 114 Gazans, with witnesses saying the Israeli military targeted medical facilities, including pediatric clinics. The airstrikes were also carried out as U.S. President Donald Trump was on his tour of the Middle East. Israel was excluded from his itinerary. However, Trump on Thursday doubled down on his proposal to displace Gazans, stressing again that the enclave should be made into a freedom zone. Speaking to reporters after a roundtable with business leaders in Qatar, Trump said that Gaza has been a territory of death and destruction for many years, adding that the U.S. should get involved and make it a freedom zone. All Arab states have rejected his plans, with Hamas calling it ethnic cleansing. Meanwhile, Israeli media reported that ceasefire talks mediated by the U.S. have not made any progress due to differences in opinion between Israel and Hamas. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The latest global showcase of ideas, innovations, and inventions is underway in Osaka, Japan. And this week, the spotlight is on Korea. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin was there for this week's Arts and Culture segment.
Every 5 years, the world comes together for the World Expo, a global stage for ideas, innovation, and cultural exchanges. This is where revolutionary inventions like the elevator, telephone, and electric car were first introduced. Now, 55 years after hosting Asia's first ever World Expo, this global event has returned to Osaka, Japan. Each World Expo centers on a main theme. Expo 2025 Osaka Kansai is designing future society for our lives with 3 sub-themes: saving lives, empowering lives, and connecting lives. Among the more than 150 participating countries is South Korea, showcasing its culture, technology, and vision for tomorrow.
So this 3-story building you're seeing right now is the Korea Pavilion for the 2025 Osaka World Expo, open until October 13th.
The Korea Pavilion's theme, With Hearts, embodies a message of harmony and human connection.
We wanted to create a space that connects Korea with the world, the past with the present and future, blending tradition, culture, and cutting-edge technology.
Visitors to the Korea Pavilion go through 3 exhibition halls with up to 100 people allowed in at a time. At the entrance, guests are asked what they value most in life. Their responses are turned into music using AI and played in a room surrounded by synchronized lights, creating a symphony of shared values. In the next hall, you get to engage with green hydrogen technology. By blowing into a pipe, oxygen combines with hydrogen fuel cells to generate electricity visibly demonstrated through falling bubbles. The final space is an immersive 3-sided cinema. Set in the year 2040, it follows a high school student using future tech to complete a musical score left by your grandfather in 2025.
It's been a month since we opened, and we're averaging 12,000 visitors per day. With a target of 1.2 million, we expect to surpass that easily. Among all the country pavilions, Korea's is consistently ranking among the most popular.
While pavilions will stay open throughout the expo, each country also has a dedicated national day to take the spotlight. South Korea marked May 13th as its National Day and launched a 5-day Korea Week. The celebration began with a recreation of the Joseon Tongsinsa, diplomatic envoys who traveled to Japan centuries ago to build peace and take part in cultural exchanges. A hanbok fashion show followed, introducing traditional and modern Korean dresses inspired by spring flowers.
In both Korea and Japan, spring is the time to enjoy flowers. We thought, why not express that excitement through hanbok? I've felt a strong eco-friendly spirit here. Hanbok, too, is created with sustainability in mind. So there's a meaningful connection between our clothes and the values of this expo.
Korean singer K-Will performed in the K-Live concert, and the K-Beauty show introduced the latest trends and tips in makeup.
팔자 주름, 우리 많이 여성분들 많이 고민하시는 부위 있죠? 이 부분이랑 머리카락이 쉽게 닿는 부분, 이런 부분들은 좀 피니싱 파우더를 써서 좀 더 유지력 있게 고정을 해주시면.
And to further foster goodwill, the Culture Ministry and Korea Tourism Organization appointed Japanese actor Kentaro Sakaguchi as this year's honorary ambassador for Korea tourism.
At first, I wasn't sure I was the right person. But after working on Korean dramas and projects, I realized I might be able to contribute in my own way. Even with cultural or language differences, I'd be honored to serve as a bridge between our two countries.
Just like this, Expo 2025 Osaka Kansai is a stage where the international community can connect and shape a shared future. 송유진, Arirang News, Osaka.
Yesterday, that was May 15th, Korea marked Teachers' Day. And among teachers celebrated was King Sejong, who created Hangeul. Our Choi Soo-hyung has details.
People press a seal engraved with Korean letters, Hangeul. They also try printing Hangeul, made up of consonants and vowels, by themselves. This is Hunmin-jeongum, the original Hangeul created in 1443.
We just came to look around, and then we just witnessed it, and we started to do Hangul, and it was really nice. Actually, it was so fun to do.
I think if you once try it out, you can learn it easy.
So she learned Korean for 3 months now. So and Hangul was really easy.
Yeah, and it was easy for me. At least it was easy.
Born on May 15, 1397, King Sejong the Great is regarded as one of the greatest monarchs in Korean history. He made important contributions to Korean culture, including in science, the arts, and agriculture. Among his contributions is Hangeul, the Korean letters.
May 15th is National Teachers' Day. Last year, the government also designated as a day to celebrate the anniversary of the birth of King Sejong, the teacher of the Korean nation, and honor his achievements.
The first official celebration of the newly designated day was held at Gyeongbokgung Palace on Thursday. Many events were held to revive the significance of Hangeul's creation and his legacy. Modern Hangeul, made up of 24 letters, is easy to learn and has a unique design. As Korean culture spreads around the world, more people are interested in learning it.
Thanks to the global popularity of K-content, Hangeul is gaining attention worldwide. Its simple shapes and small number of characters make it easy to learn, so many people want to study it. But Hangeul is more than just a writing system. Its unique design is also admired globally as a form of visual art.
More than 6 centuries since his birth, King Sejong's legacy spreads across the world through Hangeul. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Rain has been falling everywhere under cloudy skies. In particular, heavy rain of 20 to 30 millimeters per hour is pouring until tonight on the south coast and Jeju Island. Rain that began from this evening in central parts of the country, including Seoul, will stop overnight. However, a little bit more rain is forecast in northern parts of Gyeonggi-do province and Gangwon-do province tomorrow. The heat seems to be relieved due to the rain today. After this rain stops, the temperatures will start to rise again. The daytime temperature will rise to 24 degrees Celsius tomorrow, over 25 degrees in some areas, feeling like early summer. Tomorrow morning will start mild with 15 to 18 degrees all over the country. Daily highs will move up to 28 degrees in Chuncheon, Daegu, and Gyeonggi-do. More rain is expected on Monday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.
Travel creates new experiences and unforgettable memories. Through landscapes, food, scents, and textures, it awakens and satisfies our senses. The endless joy and inspiration of traveling.
제21대 대통령 재외선거.
세계 어느 곳에 있어도
내가 국가대표라는 마음으로
누구보다 땀 흘리죠. 지금이 국가대표임을
보여줄 기회. 대한민국 국민의 권리.
대한민국 국민의 의무.
반드시 투표합니다. 국가를 위한 대통령 투표. 제21대 대통령 재외선거. 중앙선거관리위원회.
Your gateway to Korea, Simply K-pop. Hello, I'm your Simply K-pop MC Taewi of AB6. 오랜만이에요. And let me introduce our Simply K-pop special rookie MC. Woohoo!
Just like chameleon.
I'm chameleon, do rebellion. 내 까다로운 마티. Just follow me. 저 말을 굵게 네 배를 흘리면 내게로 와. Now I'm calling you 뚜뚜. 매일이 지루한 너에게로 뚜뚜. 너의 어때? 어제였지도 모를걸. 같은 놈이 됐거나 벗어나거나. 뛰어나갔어 my pride. Yeah. I just wanna get her attention. Pick all my scars that go. I just wanna feel the tension.
And this week's Simply K-pop.
Gateway to Korea, don't miss out.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gan. This week, all eyes are on Jeju, where the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer is visiting South Korea for high-stakes bilateral meeting with Trade Minister An Duk-geun. The meeting, held on the sidelines of the APEC ministerial meeting, comes at a critical time. Tariff negotiations between two nations have been dragging for months, and hopes are now pinned on what's being called the July package to break the deadlock. But the timing seems to be tight, with South Korea's new administration preparing to take office and the U.S. fast-tracking trade deals with UK and China. Pressure is mounting on Seoul and Washington to find common ground. For more on this, we are joined online by Song Soo-young, Professor of Business and Economics at Chungang University. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you for inviting me.
And also joining us from Texas is Hwa-Kyun Kim, Professor of Banking and Finance at Texas A&M University's Mays Business School. Great to see you again.
Pleasure to be here.
So, Professor Kim, let's begin with the APEC ministerial meeting in Jeju, where Seoul's top trade officials, Chung In-gyo, head of trade negotiations, and Industry Minister An Duk-geun held back-to-back talks with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. So, with bilateral tariff negotiations still making little headway, what is the significance and the importance of these high-level bilateral meetings, Professor?
Well, despite the slow progress on these negotiations, still, I think it is important in the sense that these meetings can be an important platform for managing and potentially resolving these current trade surplus or tension issues triggered by the U.S. imposition of these steep tariffs, especially 25% duties on the Korean automobiles and some other goods. As we all know, Korea relies heavily on exports and recorded some good amount of the trade surplus for a few, decades in some sense. So that can be somewhat, of a big issue to the U.S., especially, the vulnerable to these type of protectionist measures. So by engaging directly with the U.S. officials, I think this is going to be at least a good chance to talk about the Korean, the voice and the situation. So at least the both sides seem to have agreed to work toward the comprehensive July package that goes beyond tariffs and covering non-tariff barriers, other security issues, and also the currency policies. So like I said, it can work as a platform for South Korea to emphasize its strengths, such as the shipbuilding and some of the other things that the Korea can offer, not just about this. And also, I think the currency policy is going to be something that Korea can use also as leverage as well. So because of the Korean political situation, especially this upcoming presidential election, these bilateral talks are probably going to be somewhat stagnant, I think, in terms of like the decision, but at least I think it's going to help, earn some time. And despite this tight deadline, I think, and also they can at least have some basic ideas about the consensus points that they can reach eventually.
Right, so it's a stepping stone that could lead to a better deal. Now, today it has been reported actually that the trade ministers from both countries agreed to begin full-fledged discussions next week in the U.S., focusing on 6 key areas, including balanced trade and non-tariff measures. Professor Song, how do you assess this development? And would you say that the negotiations are entering a full-scale phase from the second round of technical talks next week?
I believe this is some extension of the bilateral talk between the Korea and the Korean representative of the Minister of Trade in Jeju, Seogwipo, as some sideline meeting in APEC meeting. I believe that particularly the all areas, tariff, non-tariff measures, economic security, investment, collaboration, and the currency policy should be on the plate to talk about the issues. But I think the full-fledged and the detailed needs more elaboration between those two countries. However, I believe the U.S. would like to just their interest lies in some foreign direct investment from Korea to the United States, particularly in shipbuilding areas. So that would be the more of concern among the U.S. And however, that could be used as a leverage for Korea to reduce further tariff. But the progress or the talk should take long, and the reason is the longer the talk, it would be more favorable to Korea because U.S. they have to deal with China and all other countries, and even though they have a reprieve for the 90 days, but further otherwise, the United States could be some isolated because even though they succeed in some bilateral discussion about the tariff, but the other countries, they would like to set up some kind of platform that could foster and promote some free trade, excluding without U.S. And so that is the primary concern of United States. They not only they maintain their status, and also they would like to succeed in building some specific ties or relations with other countries through the bilateral meetings. So, to that regard, I think we don't need to hurry right now, and because we have to wait how the other countries. Negotiation and discussion has been played out and evolved.
Right, so we don't really need to rush at this time. Now, Professor, then adding another layer to this negotiations, before the high-level talks even began, Greer at Washington's request met top executives from Korea's shipbuilding industry, including Hyundai's Chung Gi-sun and Hanwha's Kim Hee-chul. Do you think this signals that shipbuilding cooperation is now emerging as a strategic bargaining chip in broader trade discussions?
Yes, clearly. Because Jameson Greer has met both the top person in the Hyundai heavy industry and Hanwha Oceans, and so they met with the CEOs and the high level the owners of those two conglomerates in Korea. And currently, as far as I know, Hyundai anticipating some shipbuilding in Louisiana, and the shipbuilding dock is under construction maybe, and also the Hanwha Ocean has been already. They started some jobs in the Philly shipyard, and they take care of some Navy, U.S. Navy. Maintenance and revamp and the overhaul of the ships in the United States. So this looks like the shipbuilding area is the United States they don't have any capacities and they don't have some manpowers to operate those shipbuildings. So they want to have some direct investment from Korea, and so. Then this should be used as a leverage to reduce the further tariff in other areas, but should not be all. And because we have to always be prepared for some alternative ways when there is a change and fluctuation of tariff again in the future between the U.S. and South Korea, then we have to have some other. There should be a real alternative should be prepared.
So this shipbuilding sector was always a key piece of Korea's industrial strength. So if it's on the table as a formal discussion point, it could possibly reshape leverage on both sides as well. Now, looking at the broader picture, Professor Kim, the U.S. has recently struck tentative deals with the U.K. and China involving tariff reductions and easing of non-tariff barriers. What's behind this acceleration in Washington's trade negotiation efforts?
Well, I mean, comparing these two countries, the UK and China, So clearly the UK is on the much lighter side in terms of like trade surplus or the tariff, and also the typical, the strategic alliance wise, UK probably is one of the closest alliances, right, with the US, while the China is on the other polar opposite, like, probably the most, important country in terms of like, doing this trade war and tariffs and everything. So in some sense, this, the preliminary, the results of these tariff talks between this, the two of these countries with the US is kind of showing like some form of like the minimum and maximum of like their trade deals or the tariff deals that they want to strike eventually. So I think, as you can see, the overall acceleration of these, the countries kind of set the sort of like a range of this tariff talks also with the other countries. So in some sense, showing some hints, but at the same time, this one also considers the difficult situation now the U.S. has some after doing this very massive tariffs impositions to virtually all countries. Basically now they're facing this domestic backlash and economic strain potentially. I guess the administration, while showing this like the whole range, kind of shifted toward a little bit towards negotiation, especially like the 90-day truce with China and also somewhat reduced tariffs and post certain non-tariff barriers. And also, I think these kind of things at the end of the day can also change and shift. So they still try to have like, the bargaining cards and things like that. So overall, I think this trade negotiation efforts is at least show some of like, the conversion toward a little more negotiation rather than just one-sided tariff impositions. But at the same time, like I said, it's actually showing this full range. So I think Korea is probably somewhere in between. So I think the Korea has to prepare against these kind of this additional tariffs and more talks.
We'll have to take that into consideration. Now, staying in that context, Professor Kim, South Korea has set a goal to conclude a deal by July, coinciding with the launch of the new administration, of course. But if the U.S. pushes for an earlier outcome, how do you think South Korea should respond? And what lessons can we draw from the recent U.S. deals made with UK and China?
Well, at least I think Korea has a good excuse. So the political situation is not quite suitable for this early, the deal. And obviously, in a few weeks, I think there will be a big the election, presidential election, and then the whole administrative system is going to, at least in terms of like the prime ministers and everyone's going to change. So if you just make a very hurried deal, then I think this is going to be very burdensome to the next, the administration. Therefore, you actually have every excuse to just, slow this down. And the U.S. also knows this. Although they may just the U.S. tries to push this, but there's some physical limitations or constraint that South Korea cannot really fully, handle this. So I think, it's a very, unfortunate event, but I think because of this huge political uncertainty, in a sense, I think that South Korea has some leverage actually just to delay this talk. I mean, within this big picture, they can still make some agreements, but I think, the details, which is important always, and for item by item or sector by sector, and on together with, the help with the shipbuilding and other, the area semiconductors, cars and things like that, I think, they can push this as much as possible, seeing what other countries are doing. Like I said, at least the U.S. showed the range between the China and UK. So I think probably it's better if it gets closer to the UK deal or even better deal as time goes by.
Right. So buying time would be very helpful, and South Korea's current political situation would be sort of an advantage in this situation. Then, Professor Kim, let's also shift to another issue, exchange rates. Working level discussions on this front reportedly began in earnest last week as part of broader trade agenda. Now, with concerns that the U.S. may pressure South Korea towards a stronger won, reports suggest currency policy might be left off the table. How do you see this playing out?
So exchange rate is always hard to understand. So in terms of like the trade surplus situation, this weak weak Korean won is a puzzle because the South Korea has been earning US dollars. I mean, trade surplus means that the US dollar is the flooding in to South Korea. That means the value of Korean won should increase, but that's exactly not the opposite case. The Korean won has been depreciating a lot for the last 2 years or something. And then if you look at the interest rate differences, which is another important way to understand the currency exchange rates, then clearly the US interest rate is much higher than the Korean won. And that also, that means the Korean won is going to flowing out to US and other countries. That actually can weaken the Korean won, I think. So that's probably one of the key reasons why the Korean won has been depreciated. Having said that, now the U.S. actually really wants to devalue their currency in some sense to fix a little bit of this trade imbalance situation. So I think that could actually lead to the stronger Korean won if other things are still the same. But at the end of the day, the South Korea, unlike China or other countries, not really heavily manipulating the exchange rate. It's just a little bit of the management level. So the talk is not going to be that easy because it largely depends on the first two items that I just talked about, like the trade surplus and also the interest rate changes or differences. Therefore, as time goes by, if the monetary policy changes and also the trade surplus conditions change, I mean, there will be some adjustment of the exchange rates anyway. Having said that, I think if somehow, the U.S. kept pushing this because we still want to actually fix that, similar to some Plaza Accord like in 1985 or something, well, I guess like the export actually competitiveness may decrease a bit, but at least Korea is going to earn, I think, the strong Korean won, the status, which is not bad. So I think it could be a good legitimate, I think, the leverage point for Korea. I think in case they really want it, then there's a way. If there's a way that I think South Korea can handle this, okay, so maybe we can have like a strong Korean won. So what do you want us to do? Actually, something like this.
Well, so we'll have to see on that. Now, so given this currency discussions, along with the ongoing trade negotiations between U.S. and China, the $1 exchange rate has shown considerable volatility. Professor Song, now what is your outlook on how the market trend might evolve from right here?
Actually, the Professor Kim has explained very in details and precisely the mechanism behind what is the factors, what is the important factor that drive the exchange rate change between particularly in South Korea won and US dollars. But the recent development of the depreciation of the US dollar's value is, I believe it is because of in the process of the U.S. dollar has enjoyed some exorbitant privilege for the past several decades, despite the share of the world GDP taken by the U.S. has been declining. So it means that right now, the reason why the U.S. dollar's value has maintained its status and reserve currency in the world, it has been because of U.S. at least was a credible institution has been implemented and the independent Federal Reserve System is working. But all these are right now some fading away. So that means new reserve currency or the U.S. dollars cannot be trusted anymore, even though U.S. economy is the strongest in the world, but among the other countries, they could foster and promote free trade, and they could use some other settlement currency because not affected by some discretion or some capriciousness of the caprice of the U.S. government president. So to that regards, the recent change of volatility of South Korean won exchange rate is because of the other countries, they reduced their trust on the U.S. dollars is reduced. That is the main reason. And then, as Professor Kim has mentioned, maybe stronger Korean won for the time being would be rather beneficial to South Korean small and medium enterprise. Of course, that could be a burden to some top-class companies in Korea, such as Samsung, SK Hynix, and shipbuilding industries. Their primary export is U.S., the advanced countries. To that regard, the depreciation of Korean would be better for them. But for the small and medium enterprise who rely on some trade between China and other Southeast Asian countries, then the stronger South Korean won would be better for them.
Right, and markets are definitely clearly watching on how this would evolve, and we will also keep close tabs on that. But as for now, we will have to conclude our discussion right here. Thank you so much for your insights, Professor Kim and Professor Song. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you very much.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.
Curious about Korean cultural heritage?
If you are a fan of Korean culture and history, listen up. Korean cultural heritage is based on a 5,000-year history.
The whole country is like a massive museum because it possesses such diverse cultural properties. Let's not wait any longer and take a look.
First, for beginners. For those who are not familiar with Korea, let's start with the world-famous list.
You can see how Korea's beautiful traditional patterns and historical features have been preserved.
And don't forget to experience Korea's intangible cultural heritage.